N'Golo Kanté left his house for a quick evening run. The sky was cloudy, but he didn't think much of it. He wore a light jacket and running shorts, believing the weather would remain pleasant for the duration of his jog. His plan was simple: run a few kilometers through the neighborhood, feel the wind on his face, and then return home to rest. He enjoyed the simplicity of this routine. It was a moment of peace amidst his otherwise busy life. As he ran, he felt his body warming up, his muscles responding well to the effort. His breathing was steady, the sound of his sneakers hitting the pavement blending with the city's background noise. He passed a few people, acknowledging them with a discreet nod, always maintaining his humble and reserved demeanor. But suddenly, a strong gust of wind blew through, and he noticed the temperature dropping rapidly. He looked up at the sky and saw the clouds growing darker and heavier. A light drizzle began to fall, quickly turning into a heavy downpour. The once dry streets became wet in a matter of minutes. Kanté frowned and picked up his pace, trying to make it home before the storm worsened. The cold started to bite. His jacket, which had seemed sufficient, now clung to his skin, drenched by the rain. He reached into his pocket to grab his phone and call a taxi, or at least let someone know about his situation, but his fingers found nothing. His phone was gone. He stopped under the awning of a shop and tried to recall the last time he had held it. Maybe it had fallen during his run, or perhaps he had left it at home all along. Either way, searching for it now was impossible. The wind howled, and the temperature kept dropping. He rubbed his hands together for warmth and looked around for a place to take shelter until the rain eased. That's when he spotted a small restaurant on the corner. The warm yellow light spilling from its windows stood in stark contrast to the cold gray outside. Without a second thought, he crossed the street and stepped inside. The door's bell chimed as he entered, and the comforting aroma of hot food instantly enveloped him. It was a simple place with only a few tables, but it had a cozy atmosphere. Some customers sat quietly, engaged in low conversations while enjoying their meals. A waitress quickly approached him, noticing his soaked state. She was a young woman with her hair tied up in a messy bun, wearing a worn-out apron. She looked tired, but her eyes were kind. "Are you all right?" she asked, concerned. Kanté nodded, still catching his breath from the run and the cold. "The rain caught me off guard," he explained, shrugging. "Do you have something warm to drink?" The waitress smiled and gestured for him to take a seat. "Of course, I'll bring you some soup." He thanked her and sat by a table near the window, watching the rain continue to pour down outside. The waitress returned quickly with a steaming bowl of soup and a glass of water. "This will help warm you up." Kanté took the spoon and tasted the soup. The warmth spread through his body, bringing immediate relief. As he ate, he discreetly observed the waitress, who had returned to the counter to attend to other customers. She worked swiftly, taking orders, cleaning tables, always with a quiet smile on her face. When he finished the soup, he remembered his main problem. He had no way to pay. Not only had he lost his phone, but his wallet was also at home. He called the waitress back, feeling slightly embarrassed, and explained the situation. "I lost my phone while running. I don't have any way to pay right now, but I promise I'll come back tomorrow to settle the bill." The young woman hesitated for a moment but then smiled. "That's okay, I believe you." Kanté was surprised by her trust. "Thank you so much. Could you lend me your phone to call a taxi?" She nodded and handed him her phone. Kanté quickly arranged for a ride and before leaving made sure to reassure her, "I'll be back tomorrow to pay, you can count on it." The waitress nodded, unaware that her small act of kindness would soon change her life. In the following morning, N'Golo Kanté woke up early, determined to keep his promise. He didn't like the idea of owing anything to anyone, no matter how small the amount. Besides, the waitress's kindness had stuck with him. He grabbed his wallet and phone, which he found on his table at home, and headed to the small restaurant where he had taken shelter from the rain. When he arrived, he immediately noticed something was different. The place, which had felt warm and welcoming the night before, now had a tense atmosphere. The waitress who had helped him was nowhere to be seen, and a middle-aged man, wearing a greasy apron, was arguing with another employee behind the counter. Kanté approached the register and waited to be attended to, but no one seemed to notice him. After a few minutes, he called over a passing waiter. "Excuse me, the waitress who was here last night, is she off today?" The waiter hesitated, glancing around before replying in a low voice. "She was fired." Kanté frowned, surprised. "Fired? But why?" The man looked again toward the counter, where the restaurant owner was still arguing with someone, then turned back to Kanté. "The boss was furious when he found out she gave you food without securing payment. He said it was unacceptable and let her go immediately." Kanté felt a tightness in his chest. Had she really lost her job just for helping him? He couldn't accept that. "Do you know where she lives?" The waiter subtly shook his head, indicating he couldn't continue the conversation there. But before walking away, he whispered, "She used to leave through the back exit after her shift. Maybe someone there knows where to find her." Kanté left the restaurant and walked around to the side street, where he found an older employee taking out the trash. He introduced himself and explained the situation. The woman sighed, looking saddened. "She lives a few blocks from here. But honestly, after what happened, I doubt she'll be able to pay her rent this month." Kanté thanked her and followed the directions given. After a few turns through the neighborhood, he reached a small, time-worn apartment building. He asked a neighbor and finally got the information he needed. He knocked gently on the door and waited. Seconds later, the waitress opened it. She looked visibly surprised to see him there. "You came back," she said, a bit flustered. "I told you I would," Kanté replied with a small smile. "But I wasn't expecting to find this situation." Her expression dimmed slightly, and she shrugged. "The restaurant owner was furious when he found out what I did. He said I broke the rules. But it's okay. It wasn't the best job anyway." Kanté could tell she was trying to hide her disappointment. "That's not fair," he said. She let out a humorless laugh. "The world isn't always fair, but that's life. I'll find something else." He hesitated for a moment and then made a decision. "Did you like working there?" She frowned, confused by the question. "The work was tough, but I liked the customers, and I needed the money." Kanté nodded. "What if I told you I could change this situation?" She looked at him, puzzled. "What do you mean?" He smiled. "Give me some time. I'll be back in a few days." Without saying anything else, Kanté bid her farewell and left, leaving the waitress intrigued. She had no idea what he was planning, but something told her life was about to change. In the following days, N'Golo Kanté couldn't stop thinking about the waitress. The way she had been fired just for helping him deeply bothered him. He knew he could simply give her money or help her find a new job, but that didn't feel like enough. He wanted to do something bigger, something that would truly make a difference. Then an idea came to him. Using his contacts, Kanté began gathering information about the restaurant. He discovered that the owner, besides being a strict and unsympathetic boss, was also struggling financially. The business was not doing well, and he was considering selling it. For Kanté, this was the perfect opportunity. Without hesitation, he reached out to the owner and made an offer to buy the restaurant. The man was surprised at first, but realizing he could rid himself of a business that was no longer profitable, eventually agreed. Within a few days, all the legal formalities were completed. N'Golo Kanté was now the owner of the restaurant where, just days earlier, he had taken shelter from the rain. With the paperwork finalized, it was time to reveal his surprise. That afternoon, Kanté went to the waitress's small apartment. He knocked on the door and waited, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. When she opened it, she was surprised to see him again. "You again?" she said, crossing her arms with a curious smile. "What did you do this time?" He laughed and shook his head. "Nothing bad, I promise, but I need you to come with me." She frowned. "Where to?" "Trust me," he replied, a mysterious glint in his eyes. After a moment of hesitation, she agreed. She grabbed a coat and followed him through the streets of the neighborhood. When they arrived in front of the restaurant, she suddenly stopped. "Why are we here?" she asked, visibly uncomfortable. Kanté smiled. "I want you to see something." Without waiting for a response, he opened the door and stepped inside. The place looked the same, but the atmosphere felt different. The employees watched them with anticipation. Some smiled discreetly at their presence. The waitress looked around, confused. "What's going on?" Kanté turned to her and without hesitation said, "The restaurant is yours now." She blinked, unable to process what she had just heard. "What?" He took a step closer, speaking calmly. "After what happened, I found out the owner wanted to sell the restaurant, so I bought it. And now it belongs to you." Her eyes widened, taking several seconds to fully comprehend the situation. "You bought the restaurant?" Kanté nodded. "Yes. And I want you to be the owner." The waitress covered her mouth with her hands, completely shocked. This is a joke, right?" "No," he replied, smiling. "You helped me without expecting anything in return. Now it's my turn to do the same." She felt her eyes fill with tears. "But I don't even know how to run a restaurant." Kanté shrugged. "You know this place better than anyone, and I can help you with whatever you need." Unable to contain her emotions, she hugged him tightly. "I don't even know how to thank you." "Just promise you'll make this place amazing," he said. She nodded, still overwhelmed with emotion. "I promise." From that day forward, the restaurant took a new direction. Under the waitress's management, now as the rightful owner, the place became more welcoming. The employees were treated with respect, and the customers noticed the difference. Kanté continued to visit whenever he could, satisfied that he had done something meaningful for someone who truly deserved it. And so, what had started as a simple act of kindness turned into a life-changing event for both of them.